comes to mind for me is possibly target fixation. It's a term we use in the military on the aircraft that was taking off. It was an aircraft taking off, and it's very possible the Black Hawk pilots focused on that, saw that they were well behind that aircraft, and sort of kept their eyes on that aircraft and didn't see the second one that was coming in on approach. And that's how I'm reasoning this is possible. Even with night vision goggles in a city, it's very, I mean, it would be almost impossible not to see the tail lights. They would light up with NVG. So I think they got target fixation. I also am a little concerned about the ABC.
As most now know, last night around 9 p.m., a passenger flight out of Wichita, Kansas, coming into Reagan National Airport, collided with a Black Hawk helicopter based out of Fort Belvoir. As recovery efforts continue, authorities confirmed that they do not expect any survivors.
But what I am not hearing from him are some very specific policy issues that we absolutely need if we're going to make America healthy. It is unquestionable that when 68,000 Americans die because they can't afford to go to a doctor, you got to deal with that. And I have not heard one word about the need for universal health care that exists in every country on earth. When 1 out of 4 people can't afford prescription drugs because the pharmaceutical industry is ripping us off and charging us 10 times more in some cases than the people in other countries.
And we need to figure that out. And then we need to end those exposures. We need to do gold standard science. And all of these moms recognize that we now have a unique opportunity in history, where history now is at an inflection point, where we have a unique opportunity to reverse this epidemic. And we know what we have to do. We have to study the additives. We have to end the conflicts of interest on the nutrition panels and on the drug panels that are loaded with people who have corrupt entanglements with the industries they're supposed to regulate, that have turned these agencies into sock puppets for the industries they're supposed to regulate.
The COVID vaccine. If you ask me my opinion, there are reporters run up and down the hall and they say, you still anti-vaccine? No, I'm pro-vaccine. But on the COVID vaccine and on the COVID illness, there was a 1,000-fold or more difference between the elderly and children. If you don't acknowledge that, you're committing malpractice. You're showing your ignorance. If you say a 6-month-old must be mandated to get it, the science is not there. So all this blather about the science says this and the science says that, no, it doesn't. The science actually shows that no healthy child in America died from COVID. Look it up. No healthy child died from COVID.
We had a situation in Colorado about a year and a half ago where an illegal immigrant convicted of multiple crimes, also deported multiple times, killed a mother and her child after being deported 3 or 4 times. And so if we don't start with border security, then everything else is just an exercise in futility, because you can deport somebody and they will come right back and continue to commit the problems in our society.
Today, we are announcing that we have stopped all grant funding that's being abused by NGOs to facilitate illegal immigration into this country. So it's amazing to me the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been spent by the federal government that has been sent to NGOs to facilitate this invasion of our country. So I've taken action to stop those funds, to reevaluate them, and to make sure that we're actually using the taxpayer dollars in a way that strengthens this country, that keeps us safe.
We've heard about the January 6th pardons. I think it's important that we remind people at the same time of some pardons by the previous administration. Thomas Sanders, a kidnapper who murdered a 12-year-old girl named Lexus and her mother, Swellen Roberts. Adrian Peeler, a Connecticut drug king.
You know, I look too at not only what President Trump said, but, you know, the Washington Post, the New York Times. There have been lots of articles, other news organizations, about thousands of qualified people who have applied and who were not chosen. More qualified people. I mean, there are studies and analysis at the FAA showing that they intentionally picked, through this biographical mechanism of hiring, people who were less qualified. And I just ask the American people, Who do you want at the ATC controls? You want the best person. It's this, I ask this often about the military. Who do you want your daughter to go to war with? The battalion commander, who is the most lethal, best leader, or fit a DEI category?
Yeah.
I mean, merit has to matter, especially in some jobs, brain surgery, pilots, ATCs, things like that. You can't just pick. I mean, you should pick the very best person.
The immediate report for the director of the FBI is into the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. Then that report is taken into the Office of the Attorney General and ultimately the White House and the chain of command there.
So the FBI works for the White House?
No, the FBI is a member of the Department of Justice and has been the longstanding application.
And who does the Department of Justice work for?
They're in the executive branch, as all members do at the White House.
I'll tell you what I think, and listening to their questions and your responses, which we appreciate. They know that you're going to go in and you're going to clean up that political cabal that has been over there for years. You are going to reposition the FBI to its core mission. You stated that earlier in this hearing, and there will be no more political persecutions and no more two tiers of justice, and they have liked having two tiers of justice.
So what you have right now is a massive amount of confusion in literally hundreds of billions of dollars of very important programs. Everything, like I said, from Medicaid to SNAP to Title I for education, to anything you can imagine, it's up in the air, to construction projects. There was also a pause put on all funds going to the infrastructure bill that was passed a couple years ago, and the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed a couple years ago, halting projects in the middle of them and with considerable uncertainty.
I don't know. I mean, the answer to that is I don't know.
Do you know how many babies born in this country are covered through Medicaid?
I don't know the answer.
As an attorney, doesn't federal law preempt state law?
I'm just telling you, I don't know the
I
answer
appreciate
to
that.
question.
I'm asking you whether you believe that we have to legislate in this area.
I'm not being evasive. I just don't know exactly what the law says.
How do we do that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. I do not know the answer to that.
This should be a simple question.
I don't think anybody can answer that question. I cannot commit to that because I don't know. I don't understand that. Yeah, I don't even think that.
Well, let me tell you,
We
you
have
do.
a law enforcement branch at HHS.
Actually, you do, and that's CMS.